Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am Warden Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video I am going to start taking a look at Mothership, the sci-fi horror RPG's Warden's Operation Manual. So this is by request of a subscriber, or at the very least a passer through. So if you are passing through my channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing and hitting the alert button so that you know when new content is going to be dropped. And as you can see, I try to be as responsive as I can to requests on my channel. Any comment section that you choose to drop a line and say, hey, can you take a look at this, or can you continue covering this game system? And I will certainly do so as quickly as I can. And if I have the uh, the product online, at my disposal to actually talk about. So it's been a while, about 6 months or so, since I did the box opening and started covering Mothership as a RPG system. And so I'm just going to do a really quick overview of what came into the box, and then you'll get a sense of what I'm starting to cover over these next weeks and possibly months going forward. Another thing that I like to do on my channel is I do like to mix things up a little bit, so I don't like to focus on just one game system for a long series of consecutive videos. So I do like to mix it up. So I really do appreciate when commenters come into the channel and will cause me to look back at a video that I had done sometimes years ago and ask me to continue doing coverage. I had that with D&D Beckme the other week as well. So I'm always open to going back and taking a further or deeper look into the content that I've done. So without further ado, let's switch views here so I can just go through. So the box set came, quite, like I say, quite a number of months ago. So I got the core set, and not the deluxe one, but the core set, and that came with the player's survival guide, which is basically the bulk of the rules that a player would need to know. And I covered this, quite thoroughly. As you can see, I did, quite a number of tabs. Then the Warden's Operational Manual, which I will start covering today. And this video might end up being a fairly long video, so probably 30 plus minutes. So please bear with me as I'm going through this. I might decide at some point to cut it off, and then I will do another video covering this, this book as it is. Then the Shipbreaker's Toolkit, which I'm definitely looking to go into and have some fun with. The Unconfirmed Contacts Report, which is kind of like a monster manual kind of thing for the sci-fi horror spaceverse that Mothership is taking place in. Then this is an adventure, so another bug hunt. So I don't cover adventures in great detail because I don't like to spoil things for you, but I'll talk a little bit about it, possibly talk about the way that the adventure is actually structured, more so than the content of the adventure itself. And then finally, I will wrap up with doing a talk about the Warden's screen that comes along with this whole box set. So I was a bit critical of Mothership, and of the long delay that it took to get the box set out. I think that they kind of missed hitting the iron while it was hot, when this game was all the talk of the town, basically, and people really wanted to dive into it. And if you're a gamer or a game master like myself, I like to have the physical copies before I start running a system, even if I'm using the PDFs. I really do like to have everything in hand and at my table before I start running adventures, and certainly before I start writing adventures for any game system. So I was, yes, very critical of them at the time, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the game system is actually a really excellent game system, and in its earlier stages when it was in beta and people had the quick start rules and everything, very very popular game. I will be looking to see, if I see this at convention spaces as I enter in to 2025 and start my annual cycle of five conventions that I attend to. So I will be looking to see if anyone's actually running this, and potentially I might actually consider running this in one of my the latter part of my convention year, and get something in there. I have other things on my plate as well. So without further ado, not to make this too overly long, let's get right into the PDF. And so this came along obviously with the Kickstarter, and so you're seeing the final version, I believe, of this. So this was version 13 for backers. I'm hoping that's kind of the last of the updates on it. So here's your front cover. Then on the inside of the cover, we start with the horrors. So these are like random charts that you can utilize to see, if you're trying to craft an adventure for the players. So you have your transgression, you have your omens, you have your manifestation, you have your banishment, you have your slumber. You have themes that you can create, or generate, I should say. So what theme you would generate here. And then here is the inside front cover. Warning, Mothership is a horror game for mature audiences. It contains violence, foul language, depictions of mental illness, trauma, stress, and panic, and some sexual content that may not be suitable for all audience. Please be advised. This is the kind of content warning that I think is entirely appropriate when a game system is made for the 18 plus crowd. All right, so this is not the type of game that you want to introduce brand new preteen players to. All right, so I have no problem with this kind of a content warning. And this game system is, and its theme is that of sci-fi horror. So think of like Aliens, think of like Event Horizon. Think of those, those games that are, those stories and those movies and whatnot that are, really, really on the edge of near extreme for their violence and their just creepiness and horror aspects of them. So, preparing your first session. So they give you some pointers on getting organized, which is really key to running a successful game session. Is that the game master, or in this case the warden, needs to be organized. Invite your friends to play or people you've never met before. It's fine. Open up your table for anyone willing to sit down and to try out this system that might be very new to them. And they go through some guidelines as to, your session one prep and so on. Read the rule book. Yeah, that's a really good thing. Hopefully before the game session. So yes, that's certainly something that you should do. Read the player's survival guide. That way you're going to have the core rules that the players are going to be introduced to. Skim over the character sheet. Character sheets can tell you as a game master a lot of what um, a lot of what the game system actually entails, but it also gives you the opportunity to try to predict what is forward facing to the players and what they're going to gather from just the player character sheet. And that will allow you to kind of plan ahead as well. Choose a starting scenario, which is which is provided, as they say, for the first session. You'll want to throw your players into an already bad situation and then make it worse. Economic horror, poor working conditions, a standoff between powerful factions. All of these provide tension that's ready to explore by the time you add the horror. And that's something that's like actually pretty unique, and certainly fits the genre really well. You can have the session begin mid-action, and have it where, bang, this is what you're experiencing right now. So no time for characters introducing themselves, or doing any of those kinds of things. No, or you're being hired to do this mission and everything. You could throw them right into the meat grinder kind of scenario, which is really a good idea, I think, to do something like that, because that will immerse the players directly into the genre of this RPG. So I like the idea of having them start off already in a bad situation. Then we go into session prep. Next sheet, where we're talking about psychological trauma, social pressure, violence encounters, and so on. So just giving examples of what that kind of a scenario could be that throws them right into the meat grinder kind of thing. Then find the horror. Let's look into this a little bit. So start with something that makes your skin crawl and build from there. A good horror will include a transgression that awakens it, omens, or its arrival, its appearance on manifestation, a way for the players to defeat the horror, some kind of banishment, and finally, the effects the horror has if it's as it slumbers, awaiting to return. So that is what that first page in the warden's guide kind of tells you what to do. It's to set up this format in creating horror. Step 7, something to survive. Once you have found your horror, next thing is you need to create a dilemma or a series of obstacles where your players must choose between surviving the nightmare, solving the mystery, or saving the day. It's easiest to start with survive, as it will be forefront on the player's mind most of the time. Solving something, once you have survived down, you'll need to come up with some puzzles or mysteries to test your players' wits. These can be as simple as a locked door or as challenging as a complex web of conspiracy. And then finally, someone to save. Then you'll need to establish some compelling people for your players to talk to, help, or avoid. Done well, this can help immerse your players in the world and give their actions some real meaning. Step 9 is to map it out. So once you have all of the above, it's time to put each of these items down onto a map with the shorthand notes to make running the game a breeze. So when they're talking about mapping this out, they don't necessarily mean that you're creating like a geographic map here. You're creating kind of a sequence map of what or storyboard, let's say, where it's putting out the events and the possibilities. So you should have some branching out going on here as well, because there should be more than one potential outcome from every challenge that exists. And then there's always the possibilities of your players going even beyond anything that you've planned. And so you have to be able to improvise very, very quickly on your feet as well. Um, and that's particularly true, I think, with RPGs where you're trying to create that sense of horror. Is that in my opinion, that has to have a very smooth transition from one step to the next. And if there's any real breaks in that immersive process, then it's that much harder to get back. And there have been many, many conversations going on recently, even on YouTube and elsewhere, where people have been talking about, how do you generate horror, a true sense of horror in a tabletop RPG, and it's probably one of the most difficult things to do. So don't take it lightly in your pre-planning and your planning, and don't take it lightly as you're running through your session to try to keep that momentum going, because nothing will break that immersive horror quicker than getting bogged down with game mechanics, let's say, or just interruptions to the gameplay from whatever they're coming from. Step 10, final details. Finally, you want to look through everything you've written to find hidden connections and discard weak ideas. You also make sure each class has something interesting to do. Be careful not to over prepare, because your players will have their own ideas and you'll need to leave room for them too. Yes, as I mentioned earlier. So if this is your player's first time playing Mothership, you want to sample they'll want to sample the best the game has to offer. For your first scenario, you want something which is quick, easy, and classic. Take a look at the scenarios below and pick one that sounds fun. So, exploring the unknown, investigate a strange rumor, salvage a derelict ship, exterminate an otherworldly threat, visit an off-world colony, undertake a dangerous mission, survive a colossal disaster, respond to a distress signal, transport precious cargo, or make contact with the beyond. Setting for the first game, Mothership, keep it simple. A nice 2 to 3 hour session that doesn't overstay its welcome and has your players coming back for more. All we need is one self-contained location with lots of potential for trouble, like the ones on the setting table here. Once you note that in your campaign notebook, you'll be ready for the most important ingredient, the horror. So just do your setting location, which looks like a D10. So you're rolling a D10 and determining what it's going to be, what the setting is going to be. Find the horror. So this goes back to the beginning. So developing what you're looking for and creating the actual horror of the either the session or the series of sessions that you'll be working with. So possibly the whole adventure. So transgression. So that is Act 1. Someone knowingly or unknowingly awakens the horror from its slumber. Omens is Part 2 or Act 2. The horror heralds its arrival through signs and signals. Now, you can throw the player characters into Act 2 and then have them discover Act 1. All right? So they might be thrown right into the heat of battle. Again, in dealing with something that they have no idea, what transgressed prior to this. Manifestation, the horror reveals its true form to the players. All right, and Act 2 and 3 might be happening simultaneously. Banishment, the players race against the clock to fight back and attempt to destroy the horror. And then the slumber, the horror relents for now. So the horror is driven back, and what is it doing if it has been driven back? And then here we have just like a kind of the format of surviving the nightmare. Survival is the easiest of the three obstacles. So you have various psychological trauma that you might want to impress upon the player characters, and you're trying to generate a psychological trauma, for the players, and get them to really, really have this sense for their characters to believe in this. You have social pressures, so the players exist as a part of a small community, the crew, but often exist as part of a larger community, the entire ship or colony, convince others of the plan, or using leadership or command skills is often the difference between living and dying. So they will have various social pressures placed upon them as their characters, or they may try to impose social pressures onto others in order to assist them. Violent encounters, again, it's something, something for them to have to deal with. And again, like I said, you can have them start off in the midst of a violent encounter, which I'm really, as I'm thinking about it, I'm really liking that idea to do, is to have them just bang, you're right into a really dangerous action. Might lead to a character getting killed in the first 5 minutes of the game session, but that's why, as I mentioned in the last video, that's why of Mothership, that is. That's why it's important to have a very quick character generation system, or have every player create backup characters in case of that event. Environmental hazards, resource scarcity, tactical considerations while they're in combat. So they have high grounds, you have kinetic potential, you have breach points, you have take and hold, you have escalation risk, stealth missions, ambush, collateral damage, key objectives, danger zones, pursuit and evade, and rules of engagement. So you have all of these various tactical considerations to consider as well. Something to solve, and so there are questions, there are puzzles, and then there are answers for this kind of scenario for the players to get into. And I like the fact that they have a really multi-layered, so you're kind of going from one step to the next to the next. So you have that awakening of the creature, then how does it display itself, or the event, or whatnot. And then your player characters are going to have questions, and they might have some puzzles, and if they're successful in doing the things that they're looking to do, then they should actually start gaining some answers to those questions and puzzles and moving forward. So guidelines on how to create interesting puzzles, and puzzles are difficult sometimes to create and have them work, because players are oftentimes very innovative, and they come up with ways of trying to circumvent things that you don't anticipate. And other times when you create a puzzle, and you think it's kind of a simple puzzle to solve, and they just can't work around it for whatever reason. They're just not seeing through it. So puzzles are challenging to include, but I do encourage you to at least once in a while, throw a puzzle in there, throw something that's going to really get them, trying to think through it rather than just, punch their way through it or blast their way through it or whatever. Creating compelling answers. So the answer shouldn't be, something that was too obvious. Number one. So show the lock before the key. Many names for the same thing. Answers lead to new questions. More clues than you think you need. Reveal facts, not conclusions. That's important for you to do. You don't want to think for the player characters as the warden, or as the game master. Types of evidence: testimonial evidence, physical evidence, documentary evidence. And then planning for the future. So someone to save. So once you've done all of that and you've gone through those various stages, then the next stage is either someone to save your allies and enemies. You want to save yourselves, you want to save your allies, you want to destroy your enemies. So this is going to lay that portion out for you. How do the players interact with them? And so here is a various chain of how the players might potentially interact with each of these categories. How to draw a map. I'm not going to get too much into this portion here. I mean, you can get all kinds of maps from this, from the internet too. You can get all kinds of maps. What goes in the boxes? Each box represents a location. So this is kind of like a storyboard kind of thing. All right, so that's what they're talking about here. So these are locations, right? And then you're going to put the little notes as to what happens in each of those locations. You can see that there are a variety of ways to get to certain locations, and that might change what they're actually seeing in those locations. It's kind of like a complex storyboard, like I had mentioned earlier on. Tying it all together, something for everyone, which we mentioned. So if you know you have 4 or 5 player characters and each of them have a different skill set, then you want to make sure that within the adventure, every character has his or her moment to shine. And since this is, space, it could even be its. All right, so, it could be an android or something along those lines as well. Then we get into running your first session. So, what I'm going to do? I am going to break this down a little bit, and I will get into running your first session in the next video. So this is just going to be the introduction to it, and so the next time that I'm covering the Warden's Operation Manual, I will go right into that next step. So this was all covering the planning stages, and we are now going to get ready for the next session. So I will get a little tab here that I will pull out of the player's manual and pop that here so I know what the next session is going to be for this. So yeah, we will pick it up there, and we're going to go right into the running your first session. Actually, I'm going to change this tab and put it there. It's kind of how I organize what I'm going to cover in the next video as well. I bookmark it on my physical copy, and that way I can go right into it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. There will be additional coverage for Mothership's, the Warden's operational manual going forward. I will probably get the around to the next session of this series by, let's say, Sunday. So I will give it a couple days to breathe, and I probably have some other game systems that I have to cover and continue covering as well. So hope you enjoyed it. Again, as always, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Hit the alert button. Make sure you're leaving comments in there. Ask me to focus on this particular game or this particular booklet of the game, and say, hey, when you get to it, cover this in a lot of detail, please. Certainly welcome to do that. And then if there's other game systems you want me to take a look at, you can always drop that in any game that I'm covering. I don't mind that, even if it's not related at all to the game that I'm currently talking about in that video. And as always, I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen or at a convention sometime soon. Next convention I am heading to is in January. It is Page 2, so that's the Philadelphia Area Game Expo. Second year that it's running. That is in January. I wanted to say, I'm not going to get the dates right in my head. So I think it's 19, 20, and 21. But don't hold me to that right now. I will double check that a little bit later. And yeah, I mean, just keep on enjoying playing these different games and everything. Always look to broaden your horizons in this hobby. There are so many games out there. So many of them are really, really good. And different genres as well. So dabble if you've never played a sci-fi horror before. Mothership is definitely a great system to delve into that. Remember, it's for mature audiences, right? So this is not, a PG-13, RPG, and certainly not for younger than that as well. So this is one that's pushing up for mature audiences, and so keep that and bear that in mind as well. So you all have a great rest of your day. It's only Wednesday, so it's it's hump day, so you're getting over the middle of your week and everything. So hopefully the weekend comes along fast for you as well, and you have a great upcoming weekend. You all take care. Thanks.